Yoba, what's up and what's happening, and welcome back to another episode of It's the Yoba series with me, Chris Harding. So guys, as the video suggests, I am going to be reflecting on my issues with anger and how I have dealt with anger in the past and how anger changed me, how it shaped my life and also eventually improved me as a person. I'm going to be discussing how my anger originally started, where my attitude towards life when I was a younger person, where that took me, and also how I eventually evolved. By the end of this video, I hope that the subjects that I'm about to discuss and talk about in some way helps them. I'm going to be breaking down this video into 8 sections, and the reason that I'm doing that is so that you can see the steps in where I began, how I got to situations and places that I did because of certain reasons, and then also the final step that I can summarize on my attitude towards anger and also frustration and how you can deal with those emotions going forward. Okay guys, I hope that you enjoy this video. Sit tight and enjoy. Okay, play the intro. Come on. Step 1. Why am I making this video? So there are a lot of different things that people suffer with. People suffer with anxiety. People can suffer with fear. People can suffer with things like addiction. And for me personally, the thing that I really felt that I have suffered from is bouts of anger and also a loss of my temper, which in some ways has kind of formed characteristics over the years. Now, when addressing this subject, I'm not saying that I'm walking around with a angry face or that I'm in a bad temper all the time. It's not like that. It's a lot more to do with the fact that I'm trying to discuss ways in which I deal with my anger and coping mechanisms for anger. The other reason that I'm making this video, and the main reason why I'm making this video, is so that people who watch it can hopefully get a little bit of a better understanding of themselves, that if you do struggle with things such as anxiety or things such as anger or depression or possibly some form of addiction, that you feel that there isn't necessarily a roadblock or a junction in your life. I think sometimes we feel that we come to a crossroads in life and that we're either going to go down one path or we're going to go down another. And I'm really just using my experiences in the journeys that I had to go through to be able to get to this point and my analysis on that. So if you're the type of person that feels stuck or frustrated, then I would love it if you could join me on this journey. There are always going to be difficult stages in a person's life, and I don't think anyone is ever going to be exempt from that. From when you're born, whether you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth or whether you're born with a plastic spoon in your mouth, it doesn't really matter. There's always going to be challenges for every individual somewhere along the line. And I hope that my experiences and this video can help you if you are going through some of those stages right now. Overall, my experiences changed my perspective on life, my life personally, and also the way that I perceive life to be. And in general, or overall, I feel that those experiences made me a much better person. Through dealing with anger and being able to control it through application of a focused mindset, I am more patient, compassionate, and reflective than I ever used to be. I hope that these following steps in some way help you as they have done me. Step to the relationship between me, my father, and alcohol. I think for me, initially, I don't really recall when anger wasn't a problem. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that I was an angry child or anything like that. I would probably say that I was more. I don't feel that anger was necessarily a problem in my life until I reached my sort of mid to late teens. And looking back, the real reason probably why that was is because a few different elements, as I'm sure it always is for everybody. It's not necessarily just one thing. The one thing for me that triggered a lot of anger and experiences with anger and situations that would arouse kind of anger is triggers through the relationship with me and my dad or my father, however you want to say it. And I will go into that a little bit more, but I would also say that there was also a feeling of expectation, and I'm sure that kids get that from their parents, whether it's from their mum or their dad or their guardian or someone who's close to them. I think that it's very much that you feel like you want to please them, and possibly some of the anger came from that too, that trying to make my way in life at the beginning of my kind of teenage years was definitely something where I felt that, I was trying to determine who I was going to be. For me, I definitely noticed that anger was a problem in my late teens or possibly early 20s. And again, it started, I think, because of a very clear breakdown of relationship or a relationship to myself and my father. My father has always had issues with alcohol, and as a younger man, he probably would be able to contain it to some degree. He'd be able to contain his use of alcohol to a point where he would not really show it, but he'd kind of go off and be out of the sort of family unit, if you like, for some period of time. And that's obvious that he was using it at that time. And unfortunately, that person, my father, has always had issues with alcohol for a long time, and has been a major part of his life, and also has been his relationship with alcohol has always been a major part of my life as well. I think that some of the key problems that I faced or would focus on, one of them would be my attitude. My attitude as a younger person was kind of very volatile and quite quick to react and quite quick to respond, even when the situation didn't necessarily need me to react or to respond. In fact, probably most, if not all situations, really don't need you to react or to respond unless they really are sort of very drastic. However, I was certainly walking around in life with that kind of mug, like you're walking, your mug, your face is sort of walking around with an expectation to find some form of trouble. And that's probably because, in reflection, and I've reflected on this for a long time, that it's probably due to the fact that I'm trying to consolidate my mind, reassure myself, try to defend myself to whatever degree I feel I need to defend my reason for being or whatever, and also trying to find myself. And I will go into this a little bit further, but definitely a lack of identity was when I got a little bit older, I realized that there was a major lack of identity missing, and that I had to be able to accept that. And part of that acceptance allowed me to be able to understand that I have my own identity and no one else's, including my father's. I think for me, the anger is triggered quite often when there is a personal situation. This situation most commonly for me arises when there is a very quick response in terms of somebody else responding very quickly to me in a more emotional way, and I'm trying to navigate my way through that emotional response, or if the response is possibly reactive, that I'm being reactive, or they or whatever other party is being reactive, I immediately become defensive. And the way that I would say that I'm defensive is that in my head, it very much feels like I'm being backed into a corner. In my mind, in my mind's eye, I can feel me kind of pushing up against the wall of this corner of a room, and that the other person or the situation is growing on top of me. It's kind of pushing more and more into me until at some point I feel like I have to defend myself and push back. And that is exactly the time, that's exactly the trigger when I explode. My anger, rather than just pushing back to defend myself and possibly saying enough or stop or walk away from the situation, it's more explosive. It goes on the attack. So it's this big drawback of defense that can happen over a period of time. Situations don't always necessarily mean that they happen immediately. A lot of the time, situations can be growing between myself and another party, another person, another group of people. And over time, those things start to become more clouded. And I think in that time, the pressure of defending yourself eventually flips, and it has the complete opposite effect. And like I said, can be really explosive, unfortunately. I'm not going to give you a typical scenario because I'm sure that everyone can relate to some degree of that feeling or reaction. I do feel that a typical response would be when I'm trying to sort something out for someone else. I always have this slightly strange hero complex where I feel that I can sort of fix everybody's problems. And possibly that's why I've become a personal trainer and nutrition coach. But yeah, that's kind of where it comes from. And possibly sometimes getting too involved too easily, too quickly, can also be a way to land yourself in that type of situation with another person. And possibly they also too are being defensive, and at the same time, through them being defensive, they're kind of putting a lot of pressure on you, and you then become defensive. I think that one very good thing to note is that when you're young, when you're in your teens or in your early 20s, you are trying to break free of kind of your parents, you're trying to break free of home, you're trying to find your own identity, you're trying to find who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And so I think because of that, you're in a very volatile situation within yourself, where you're a sort of a more volatile mind. And I think that due to that, you are more likely to find yourself in situations where you are more vulnerable. I think that you place yourself in those types of situations because you are young, you are naive, and you don't necessarily know what you're doing is a good or a bad thing. And I'm not necessarily talking about, the worst types of things such as, doing drugs or, anything that society deems wrong. I'm not talking about that. I'm more talking about types of situations where you confront someone over something that actually could be done with more tact. You could possibly be more kind and more considerate to the other person and understanding of their situation too. That in turn, I feel, will lead to a much calmer and civil outcome. I would say that when you're kind of a teenager and you're in your 20s, you're definitely in situations where the situation can be difficult to navigate. And I think that is because you are a young person, and possibly the people that you're with are also young too, and also naive, and they have possibly also grown up a different way to how you have grown up. And that all is a big mixing pot of sort of feelings and emotions and where and how they need to be expressed. Now, for people who struggle with parents or siblings or people that they're close to who have issues with addiction, but you know that person, you've known that person for possibly a long time, it is quite sad and it is quite frustrating when you start to feel that as you're growing older and as you're getting older into your sort of, like I say, teenage years and 20s, you're starting to find that your relationship with that person is starting to become more difficult. The issues around the things that they're dealing with or not dealing with, probably more to my situation, relationships start to become frayed. And because it's someone that you are close to or you do care about, does start to have an internal mental effect on you, your perspective of life, how you view things, how you view other people, and how you view them. And that you start to feel that, you know, why is this happening to me? Or why is it happening to them? And how do I navigate myself in this? And I think that because of a naive brain and a naive mind, and you know, a young person trying to find their way, I think it basically results in them turning possibly inwardly and becoming, sensitive to a lot of things in life, or outwardly, where you become more aggressive, you become more on the attack, and it's all the time. And I think, to put it into a nutshell, it basically revolves around the fact that the relationship between myself and my father and his relationship with alcohol and not being able to cope or deal with the normalities of life basically made our relationship estranged. And that was very different to how it was when I was a child. Now, I'm not going to bore you with any more detail about my childhood or anything like that. This is not a psychoanalysis of myself. This is just a description of how things were, and to give you a baseline level as to where things would then go. If I were to describe anger, I would call it a forever burning ball of energy. It never dies. It never stops. It never ceases. It's always there, bubbling under the surface. And now that I can control it, it's actually a really good source of energy. It's a real, I'd be lost without it. And it's not the same type of anger that you would necessarily expect. When you hear the word anger, even, it probably, creates a picture in your mind of literal anger, temper, emotion, a violent change in someone's characteristics. But at the time when I was kind of learning to deal with my anger, I was definitely noticing that my attitude towards other people, and even my friends, my close friends, my childhood friends, was becoming slightly more stagnated, and I was growing a lot more distant away from them. And that's because I felt that my situation was unrelatable to other people, that I couldn't really talk to anyone about it. I didn't really feel that I could talk to my mum for whatever reasons. I certainly couldn't talk to my dad. And in general, I probably felt a lot more comfortable in hiding how I felt about those situations. I think at the time, it was probably the lack of knowledge that I probably did need to talk about these things going on with me at the time. And like I say, probably feeling that there was no one else to be able to relate to when it came to these certain type of situations that are going on with you personally, but how they're starting to reflect on your relationship with other people, colleagues and friends. And that took a long time for me to really kind of learn. I'd say that actually took years to learn that my attitude towards other people was a big problem for them and also for me. How alcohol or any substance that is addictive can affect the relationship between you and your parent is very pronounced. I would probably say that with addiction, or people who suffer with addiction, what they don't realize, and I guess it is selfish, but what they don't realize is the addiction pretty much comes above anything else. It comes above their relationship with other people. So in my dad's case with me and his family, and even his neighbors, to some degree, yes, it's something that is very much, primary on their list of, where and when they're going to get the urge to use that substance to be able to relieve the way in which they feel. Subsequently, what that means for the other person is that they also have to kind of start to suffer with the substance abuse as well. A great example would be that you could talk to a person one day and they're absolutely fine. And literally the next day you could talk to them and they're aggressive, they're abusive, and they're really kind of slightly uncaring towards you. And the flip is so sort of severe and very significant that the only way to react to it probably at that time is to feel offended, is to feel angry. And I think if that's happening on a slightly regular occasion, it's happening on a regular basis, it will have that effect on you to be able to feel angry, to feel bad-tempered, to feel like you want to attack, but you can't attack the person who's just done it to you. Because I have always felt that when an issue arises with someone who's an alcoholic, who is someone who has problems with addiction, you don't necessarily feel angry straight away. You don't feel immediately bad-tempered. I feel it kind of grows within you over time, and I feel that it mounts up. It doesn't necessarily mean that one reaction begets another reaction. I think quite a lot of the time it builds up in a sort of ball or a mass, and then because that ball gets so big, it burns for a much, much longer time. It kind of is this ball of energy. And yeah, like I say, it can burn for a long period of time. And then that has a much longer effect in terms of your personal timeline, where you've got to get over that initial reaction that someone has, been aggressive to you, has been abusive towards you, has either verbally or physically abused an individual. Why I don't think addiction had a negative effect on me? Well, to some degree, I guess in a way I was an addict because I suffered with anorexia. And so I basically made not eating food my addiction. And I would say that I am an addictive character. I'm certainly addicted to my job now and my career and the things that I do. And possibly there are traits of my father in my characteristics personally that are there. But why I feel that the actual substance abuse didn't kind of filter down to me is because my father, his father, and his father's father had all struggled with alcohol. And for me, from a very young age, I was kind of like, I'm just not interested in this. I'm not interested in repeating this cycle. Okay, I'm bad-tempered. Okay, I'm angry, but I'm not interested in repeating this cycle on myself. I've got enough stuff going on. And I think also in terms of, parenting from my mum, she never really drank at all. She never smoked. She never drank. She never, really had any substance abuse at all. There was no substance abuse in my home. And so I had a very secure environment from that respect. And for that, I have always been grateful towards my mum for providing that for me. And that's probably why I never went down the same road that my dad went down. And also that I hadn't been down his path either. I hadn't been through his challenges, his turmoils. I haven't been through those same things. I've had my own journey. And so to that respect, I don't feel that there is really an excuse to then kind of say, right, I'm going to do the same thing to me just because that's what they did. I want to do something new. I want to do something different. And if there is a fault there, especially at the age of 34, which I am now, I want to be able to create more than I want to be able to take away. Step 3, my working environment and when I realized I had a problem with my temper. So if anger is an emotion, I'd probably say that temper is the physical response to that emotion. And it's not the type of temper for me personally where I would throw things around, but it would be something where I would possibly lash out at other people. And I think that with anger and with temper, in reflection and through a lot of meditation and a lot of mindset coaching and reading over the last sort of 10 years, maybe slightly less than 10 years, I really feel that I lacked identity. That's really what my main problem was. I think that when you find the person who you are, the person that you want to be, the person that you want to create, as long as it's true to you and it reflects you in the best light possible, and the things that you adopt, the things that you read, the things that you listen to, the music that you listen to reflects who you are, then you begin to build an identity. And I personally don't have any children, but if I were to have children, I think from the experiences that I have had with my dad, I would definitely feel that helping them to form their identity would be something that I'd take a lot of pride in. And that anyone who's watching this video, I hope that you feel or do eventually find a way to believe in yourself, obviously, but self-belief, I feel, comes from a way to find your own identity, who you are, where you fit in with society, where you fit in with your work colleagues, where you fit in with yourself, feeling comfortable with yourself just to walk into a room full of people that don't necessarily know you and you don't necessarily know them, or people that you know really well, takes a certain amount of confidence. And I always feel that that confidence comes from identity. And I don't necessarily know if there's any questions that you need to ask yourself. I probably would say for me personally, it came over time, and it came over a period of time where I was doing a lot of reading, a lot of meditation, and a lot of work on my mindset. And before the video finishes, I will list a few books that really did help me to be able to find my identity. I will go into this in a lot more detail a little bit later on in the video, but one thing that I would definitely say that helped me was that I formed my identity through the work that I do, through my career. And that doesn't necessarily always happen for everyone. Possibly people's identity can come from things that they create, but doesn't necessarily have to be something that they sell or something that they provide a service to. Or it could be a hobby or a pastime or something that you do socially with other people. And I think that you can very much find an identity through those things, as long as they have some form of positivity. If the thing that you find has got a lot of negativity in it, whether it's a person or whether it's something that isn't good for you, or something that you do over and over again doesn't result in a good answer for you, then you're not going to find your identity in those negative things. I feel that you're going to find your identity when you start to participate in more positive experiences, more positive things such as giving back. One thing that I found as an individual is that when you start to give back and you give away kind of for free, you give your time, not money, but you give your time, you give your experience, you give your knowledge, you share your values, you share your moral compass with other people, and perhaps that helps enlighten them to some degree. Or even just talking to someone that you feel that you've helped raise their level of energy in that day, in their day, is a fantastic thing. It starts to give you a power. It starts to give you this feeling that you want to do more of that, and that you become known for being that type of person. And I think that definitely goes along to sort of your self-worth and also forming your identity, which I think are two massive things when it comes to finding one's confidence in life. To put it into really simple terms, anger is a very, very strong emotion. It's an overpowering emotion. You've got lots of different emotions, and the way that I've always perceived it, or I have done for a long time, that, your central nervous system is basically there pumping all sorts of different chemicals around your body as to response to your situation at the time. So if you're walking through a jungle and you meet a lion, you're going to want to run away from that lion in case it eats you. And so therefore, your central nervous system is going to supply the types of chemicals and hormones and energy that you need to be able to turn away and run away. And I think that as an emotion, anger is a very, very strong emotion. And I think that, like I was talking about earlier, with that buildup of mass of frustration, anxiety, and feelings of the things that I've just said, I feel that emotion overwhelms you. And when it overwhelms you, it kind of starts to seep into your lifestyle, or it starts to seep into your life, and it becomes very noticeable. And I would definitely say that strong emotion, anger, is something that will affect your prospects. It will affect your opportunities. It will affect your ability to make friends. It will definitely give you the opportunity to lose people. People start to see you in a different light. People will start to think and possibly say to, people that they know who know you, I don't like him as much as I used to. He's kind of slightly bitter. Every time I talk to him, it's always a negative experience. If I ever raise anything with him, which is a sort of a slightly touchy or sore subject, it kind of becomes this kind of very heated conversation with him, and I, possibly even try to avoid him as a person or her. And I think that that's how anger can be the worst thing, is that it hinders your chance to be who you really can be, and it also hinders the fact that you're missing out on loads of opportunities, whether they're experiences with other people, where you can laugh and have fun and create memories, or possibly the opportunity to get employed or to get a job or to focus on what you really need to focus on. And that was a big, big thing for me. My issue with anger starved me of a lot of time. I spent a lot of time being angry, being overly emotional about my personal situation, that actually I wasted years of my life, unfortunately, with to no avail, other than the fact that it was a massive lesson for me, and one that I'll always carry for the rest of my life, but one that I will certainly never repeat again. Step 4, training, strength, and mental well-being. So one thing that I found quite early on, when I probably didn't realize that I was a person who suffered with anger as kind of a constant state of being, one thing I did find is that I really enjoyed my fitness. And it was a great release for me. You know, when you're carrying around your own personal problems up here in your mind, you need some way to be able to alleviate yourself. You need a form of relief. And that relief for me, thankfully, started with running, and then it went to sort of more athleticism. And then it kind of turned into work in the gym. And I think initially it was something where to run or to cycle or to swim was just a way to be able to get out of my head, focus on something. And that focus was so narrow and so small and so sort of niche in a way that it would be very intense for like long bouts of time. Like sometimes I'd run for way over an hour with ease. And like I say, it then eventually formed itself into the gym. And I think that's because I suffered with anorexia. And I got too thin, basically. And so when I started to repair and recover from that issue that I had, I started to want to lift weights because I wanted to be a little bit bigger. I'd lost a lot of muscle mass and I was a very, very skinny individual indeed. But when I got into the gym, you know, I found that my well-being was much, much better. I felt like I was in a much safer place, and that, you know, okay, yeah, there are very, very occasionally some people that, you know, might look at you in a certain way, but that doesn't really exist in gyms. I believe that most people are kind of more conscious of being looked at by other people, and those people are conscious that they're being looked at by them. I think that most of the time when you were in a gym environment, it very much is a personal thing. And I think that's why when people do train in gyms and they kind of understand why they enjoy it themselves personally, because some people obviously can't stand being in a gym, they can't stand being amongst other sort of sweaty individuals and things like that. I think it's because it's definitely a mecca for the individual to focus on themselves purely at that time. And so with that emotion that I'm carrying around, it gave me a sort of never-ending, unquenched thirst for training, just wanting to train as much as I possibly could. And I was probably training 6, maybe even 7 times a week. And again, you know, something that becomes addictive, and take it to the sort of furthest level I possibly can. And maybe that is a reflection of a characteristic that is either I've been born with it, or that I've learned it from my father. But to that degree, I feel that training for strength definitely had a very, very positive effect on my mental well-being. And I would always encourage anybody who is suffering with anxiety, frustration, and especially depression, that you find a way to get active. You find a way to get out into either fresh air, you get out to possibly socialize with other people, meet other people. And I also feel that being active is definitely the way forward for your brain. You know, we are creatures that should move. And I think that if you're in that dark spot, even if you find a way that you can just possibly move or motivate yourself, even if it was for 15 minutes, even if it meant just going out and just getting a little bit of light, a little bit of fresh air, it would make a massive difference to your overall well-being, and possibly will start a trend with you where you start to do that on a more frequent basis and feel better with every turn that you give that activity. So I've started my training and I've started going to the gym. I'm probably also going for running as well. And what happens kind of quite quickly is I start to change my diet. And in the long term, I actually start to change my diet for the better. So once I started training and I started going to the gym, I then found that quite quickly I changed the way that I ate. And in the long term, that had a really positive effect for me. The other thing that I probably didn't notice as a side effect of training was this ability to be able to feel calmer. When I came away from the gym, when I came away from, having a training session, I felt a lot more equilibrium. I felt much calmer. I felt much more at peace with myself and mentally clear. And that the problems or the issues or the emotions that I was currently having weren't as swelling. They weren't as overwhelming. And that felt fantastic. And I can see why, it is addictive, because it's something that you're like, wow, this exercise thing can really help me resolve a lot of my problems and a lot of my issues. If you found that eating better and training has definitely helped you and helped you in your times where you have needed clarification, calmness, and a decent headspace, please feel free to add a comment in the comment section below. I would love to be able to read your stories. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the like button, and also that little bell to remind you whenever a new video is available. Step 5, my worst day and my best day. My worst day and my best day happened all in one day, and it resulted by the end of the day of me having an epiphany, or at least a moment of clarity. And I won't go into too much detail because there are other people who are involved in that day. But basically, I worked at a supermarket. I worked at a food store, and I had worked there for 4.5 years, give or take. And in that time, I had qualified from university before I started working there. So I qualified from university, and I think I must have left at the age of sort of 21, maybe nearly 22, something of that nature. And I went back to working for this food supermarket store that I had been working for when I was sort of 16, 17, before I went to university. It was kind of a stopgap for me. I sort of thought, I'll go to university, I'll make sure I get my driving test done and all that stuff, and I'll start looking for work. And because of my issues with my own personal attitude towards things in life, and one of those being, my issues with anger and issues with my temper, that definitely changed my attitude towards a lot of things. And that will seep into everything that you do. It seeps into your relationship with people, but more importantly, it takes away your identity, it takes away your confidence, and it takes away your ability almost to kind of act upon yourself or certain situations. And one of those very important situations for me at the time was actually trying to find another job, and was trying to go out there and find work that wasn't working in a shop. And that's no disrespect to people who work in shops. Everyone needs to have a job, and everyone has a different circumstance and scenario. However, for me personally, that isn't what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be able to find a way to get out of that scenario and that situation. However, a working environment when you're going to that place every single day, and I was actually going there 6 days a week to probably try and earn a little bit more money, meant that I was there all the time. And it wasn't the greatest of environments because it didn't really have a atmosphere where it promoted you as an individual, or it promoted work, or it promoted some form of quality. It kind of really was just a very mundane, basic, mandatory sort of job that you did day in and day out. And after 4.5 years of doing that, it really kind of ran me down and very much made me feel very depressed, as much as feeling a lot of anger. And along that journey, I met different people that worked within that supermarket. And, you know, they had effects on me. Sometimes these people would be friends, sometimes they'd be more negative. And I probably feel, looking back now, that, you know, that was actually not doing me the best of favors. I wasn't really moving on to where I wanted to go, and I kind of was being held back, but I was holding myself back by surrounding myself with more negative people. My worst period, or my worst time on this particular day, was that I had a huge argument with another colleague of mine. And I won't discuss the argument because obviously it involves another person and it doesn't need to be discussed, but it was quite a volatile and horrible argument that resulted in not a very nice outcome. And I had a really crap day. You know, I was like, I just don't know what to do anymore. I'm depressed. I've been put on these depressive medications because the doctor now tells me I'm depressed. I've got this degree hanging over my head that I'm not using at all. And I'm not finding any kind of way out, basically. And that's how I felt. And that particular day had just got to the point where it was really bad because I had verbally and physically attacked someone who had attacked me, or I felt that they had attacked me. And for that, you know, it's incredibly disappointing to talk about that actually that did actually happen, and it did actually, you know, result in feelings of you know, some guilt, but also, you know, worry, fear, anxiety. And so I took myself off to the gym, and I took myself to the gym, and it was winter, and I didn't have a car because I couldn't afford one. So I cycled every day to the gym. And I remember cycling, and I'd had such a bad day, but it took me some time to kind of pick up the energy to go to the gym. So I cycled down there. And when I got there, it was so cold that the gym owner said, "I'm going to lock up, Chris. Like, I can't be here. Like, it's just too cold. There's no one else coming." But he said, "I'll give you the key and you can lock up. I've got a spare key." So he said, "You can lock up and you can just kind of use the gym." And he trusted me, you know. And so I was in the gym on my own, bitterly cold, and trying to get motivated to try and train. And I was doing some training, and obviously I was reflecting on that day, and the incidents that had happened, you know, only a few hours before that time. And I was just like, man, I just don't know where I'm going. Like, what is this? I didn't picture myself here. And I was 26 at the time. And so at 26, you know, my friends had pretty much moved on. You know, they had, you know, some of them I think had got married, children, new homes, you know, prospects, careers, opportunities, and starting to live their own life. And I very much still felt, and that probably was a big plus to the anger, I think I felt that I was still almost like a child, you know, that I'm 26 years old, I'm still living at home. I've got this really, you know, mundane, boring job. And it was all inwards. It was all self-reflective, and I hated it. Everything was always about me. It's as if my mind couldn't stop thinking about itself. I had nothing else to think about other than myself. And, you know, that made me feel really fed up, and I sort of almost sickened me in a way, because I was just bored of it. I was bored of the same conversation. And because I'd had such a really bad experience at work that particular day with another colleague of mine at the time, I kind of just sat and I just thought, and I just kind of, I was completely silent. And in that silence, something just clicked. And I was like, you know, I'm in here at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and it's freezing cold, and I still want to try and train. And I must be able to do something with this. There must be something here that I can do that sort of, I can use this ability that I love to train. And then I start to think about it, and I start to think, actually, when I'm here, I'm talking to other people about training. I'm helping other people with their training. People are always asking me if they know a certain exercise for this muscle group or such and such. And what I do in my training, because I was there so frequently, because I was there all the time, I became someone, without kind of really realizing it, that people were turning to ask me their opinion. I was a very familiar face when I was in that gym, and I had nothing to do with that gym. I never worked there. I never had any affiliation with it, but that was pretty much the case. And then the penny dropped that I was like, I could do something with training. I could do something with coaching. Possibly I could look at doing personal training. Possibly that will be the way out. Possibly that will give me the opportunity that I've been looking for. And so for me, it generally was, as if something had just switched on. It was an epiphany. It was a moment of clarity or whatever. But it was definitely something where I then felt very, very thirsty to chase that kind of idea. That initial idea sparked a big movement for me to be able to kind of start to research that, and how would I do it, and how much would it cost, and everything of that nature. And so that one particular day was the worst day I've ever had in a working environment. And by the end of it was probably not the best day that I've ever had in my working environment, but it definitely was a day where, I had this absolutely overwhelming thought, this epiphany, this manifestation of something that could potentially be a positive, and I could focus on that rather than what I was dealing with at the time. Step 6, personal training, growth, and business. So from that one day where I basically had this idea that I was going to become a personal trainer, and that I was going to start to focus myself on, qualifying to become a personal trainer, in a very, very small nutshell, I quit my job eventually, sometime after. I saved up enough money to be able to do this course. I paid all the money to do this course, and I think I had to borrow some money from my mum. And I then started this course, and I had no money. In fact, I only just about had enough money to drive there every single day to do this personal training course. And I did my level 2 and my level 3 personal training course in 6 weeks. Once I did that, I actually then had to go back to the same company that I had left, because I literally ran out of money and I had nothing. I had no job, and I couldn't get any work in any gyms. So in the kind of short period of time, I actually had to go back to work for the same company, but another supermarket, another store where no one knew who I was, because I didn't want to go back to the previous place that I had been to, and kind of, everyone would sort of say, "Oh, I proved you wrong," you failed. So that's what I did. But eventually I found myself at the gym that I currently work at now. And I have been there for, I think, probably 8 years. And in that time, I built my own business. I also qualified as a sports therapist along the way. And I also qualified as a nutrition coach along the way. And with those experiences, the depression, the anger, the lots of feelings of different emotions towards different scenarios and situations that had happened for me, I definitely felt that I was onto a winner, and that gave me an absolutely massive appetite to learn and to do more. And once I started to invest in myself, all of a sudden, other people, such as clients who were paying clients, started to invest in me too. They started to really see where, there was potential in me, and there was potential in what I was doing. And then slowly but surely, I started to realize that there was a lot of potential in them. The more people that you meet in life, and this is something that I generally believe in, the more people that you meet in life, the more that you share your experiences and that you listen and that you gain other people's experiences and their knowledge and their feedback on things that they have done or things that they have accomplished or achieved, things that they've missed out on, things that they've done wrong, regrets. They're all, you know, massive pieces of free education. And so when you invest in people, and I think that, you know, one of your greatest assets is people, the right people. When you surround yourself with the right people, it definitely improves your life. And it makes you want to continue to do that. It makes you want to continue to improve who you are. And that then means that you're then going to continue to improve those people that are investing in you as well. And so it's a trade-off. It's a constant trade-off. And it's a fantastic opportunity. And so I'm not necessarily saying, you know, become a personal trainer. I'm not saying become a coach. I'm not saying become a, you know, a life coach or anything of that nature. What I am saying is that if you're finding that you're struggling, if you're finding that you feel more depressed, you feel more low, rather than thinking about yourself in terms of your mind thinking about itself and your situation, take yourself away from it for a second and look at other people and just talk to someone else, talk to someone different. Invest your time in another person. It could be a work colleague, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a relative, it could be someone that you don't know whatsoever, but you're possibly interested in what they do. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you have to go up to them. It might be someone that you admire and possibly that you could contact them. You know, that's really what social media is for. It's a big platform of communication and opportunity to contact and, you know, invest in yourself and also invest in other people too. And perhaps somewhere down the line, they may invest in you. And by them investing in you, it will start to improve your confidence. It will start to improve your outlook on life. And again, it adds to your identity, you know, the person that you're going to be, the person that you strive to be, the person that you want to be. And also to add to that, I do feel that there is a lot of constant talk about, you know, money as being an asset, and money is a fantastic asset. But the other two things that I would like you to really take away from this video are that one of your greatest assets, if not the greatest asset, is time. Time is a fantastic thing that you should definitely invest in. And the one piece of advice that I give to anybody is, don't let anyone or anything waste your time when you could be doing something so much more productive. You know, there's actually a penalty of charge, you know, a financial charge that I give to people if they waste my time. If someone says that they want to buy a service from me and they don't pay up, then there is a financial charge on top of that as well. Time is an absolutely massive asset, and you don't have all the time in the world. You've only got a certain amount of time to be alive and to enjoy life. And so because of those two literal things, enjoying life and being alive, you know, it's for a limited time. And so therefore, don't waste it. Don't squander it. Invest it. Invest it in other people that you want to invest it in, and invest it in yourself first and foremost. The second asset that I would always direct people towards, as I said before, is other people. And it can be difficult to find those other people. And that's possibly where time as an asset comes into play, that you do want to be able to surround yourself with the types of people that can support you. By doing that, you can find a way in which to create, stimulate, and grow your own identity, your own person, your own character, and what that person's going to do. in a weird way, you're kind of slightly a bit like this avatar in some sort of matrix, and you have the opportunity to build your life however you want it to, however you want to design it. And there are really no boundaries, but the things that there are they're definitely going to be barriers. They're definitely going to be hurdles that you're going to have to jump. And because of that, a lot of people tend to shy away from it. They think that by making a mistake means that they're going to fall off the edge of a cliff. But actually, it's very far from the truth. Actually, by making the mistake, you go, oh, okay, actually, I need to do that the other way around for it to have a more positive effect. And that, in turn, will go towards your identity, manifesting the character, the person that you want to be. And I very much believe in that. And you don't necessarily have to believe in that at all. You might think that that's a complete load of bollocks. But there is truth in the fact that time is one of your greatest assets. Investing in yourself and investing in other people is also a great asset that leads to an even greater asset, which is a feeling of self-worth and self-identity. Step 7, how a bad trait can turn into a good outcome. So as I touched on before, the relationship that I had with my dad, especially as I was growing up into an adult, certainly didn't give me an idea of who I wanted to be or who I was going to be, and very much made me inwardly reflect on his issues, which then became my issues. And I feel they kind of put a big pause on my life for a certain amount of time. And also that being in a single parent household, that parent is going to have, their own ideas about how you're going to live your life and the things that they want for you. And sometimes, and this especially is true for me in my case, those expectations can sometimes be a lack. And how they can lack is the fact that they manifest into a fear that they don't want you to make any mistakes. They don't want you to make any trips, any falls, and they just don't want you to fail. But actually, that's the furthest thing from the truth. If I'm completely honest with you, the best thing that you can do is to get yourself out there, especially when you're young, because you haven't got the worries of big financial burdens such as a mortgage and energy bills and, food bills and things of that nature. Actually, it's the best time to make mistakes because you're young and you're not invincible, but you probably think that you're pretty much invincible, and you are the furthest away from thinking about death. You're 19, 20, 21, you're in your mid-20s or in your early 30s. You definitely are not thinking about, the end of life. You're thinking about the beginning of life, hopefully. And with that, there is no better time to make mistakes. There is no better time to fail. And from my experience, the more times you fail, the more times you make mistakes, the only thing it does is it makes you so much better at resolving issues, problems, mistakes quicker. That's basically all it does. You become a problem solver, if you like. You're probably even someone that people would turn to be able to resolve a problem that they're having because you're so good at resolving those problems because you've resolved so many of your own, because you've thrown yourself into the deep end. And I've met many, many people along the way who would never do that. But they're still kind of in the same situation now, like they're still in the same financial situation. They're still in the same life situation, relationship situation. And it's a bit like you haven't learned. You haven't learned the lesson. And I feel a little bit like life keeps giving you the lesson so that you learn it and move on. But a lot of the times people will see the lesson, but they'll say, oh, the lesson is a mistake or it's a failure or I'm going to trip up. And they won't take that plunge. They won't make that mistake and they never quite learn it. And because they don't learn it, they don't move forward. And if they don't move forward, they don't progress. And, there are less and less opportunities for that particular individual. For me, now reflecting back, life is absolutely amazing. And I don't mean that as in all my life is amazing and I've got a Lamborghini and, I live in a huge house. There's none of that. I have a very average life. What I mean is that life is really beautiful. It's really precious. And, it is a shame to some degree, but it's only here for us, as individuals, for a short amount of time. And that's what I mean when I say about the asset of time, is that, the more of it is wasted, the greater the shame it is. And that's where I probably feel now when I look back at my relationship, which is very distant, unfortunately, with my father. And he still continues to have major issues with alcohol abuse and alcohol consumption, that he's wasted so much time. There's a lot of life that has been wasted, and he'll never get it back. And that's the thing that I kind of probably really want to pass on to you guys in this video, is that don't waste your time on things that aren't going to become opportunities for you, or possibly opportunities to invest in other people, in money, in opportunities. And those are the things, in my opinion, that make life beautiful. You create more memories, you create more better frequencies, you have better vibes, you're someone who's more positive, you're someone that people want to surround. They want to surround themselves with people like you, because you're someone who sees the beauty in what you do, the craft, or the job that you do, or the person that you are, the person that people feel that they can talk to. And yeah, just the main thing is that you should enjoy the journey, enjoy the adventure that life has to offer, and try not to fight it. Just try and accept it for what it is. Navigate your way through the difficult spots, and bask in the times where life can be really eventful and really joyous. If there's one massive piece of advice, other than talking about the assets of time and the assets of finding your identity or self-identity, is that you should always reflect. And that's how I was able to deal with anger. I dealt with my anger by reflecting upon it. I reflected deeply on what I had done in the past, why I felt that way, and why I chose to act in that way. And by reflecting upon it, I sort of felt like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best thing to have done at the time, but I'm not going to do that again, because the result was not what I wanted. And in that respect, or in my opinion, that is a fantastic opportunity to learn. Life is always going to teach you. That's what I've found anyway, that life is always going to be a giver of a lesson. And I feel that as long as you reflect, you'll always want to learn. As long as you reflect on the positives, you can reflect on the day. You can reflect on a good week that you've had. You can reflect on a bad situation that happened. And sometimes, granted, things are a lot more difficult to get over than others, and they take more time, which is why time is such a fantastic asset. However, when you do reflect, I think that because you're reflecting on either a positive or negative situation, you're trying to find the lesson there. And because you're more versed in finding lessons, you then become more hungry to want to learn more. And that can be anything from knowledge to finding out more about, people's lives, to finding more about stories, things that interest you, history, finances, in way to make investments in all sorts of different walks of life, not necessarily just money. But yeah, that's probably the way that I dealt with my anger, is that I learned to reflect and I learned to talk about the issues that I had with anger and my temper. Step 8, summary. So guys, I hope that you found this video insightful and also helpful, and that you're able to take something away from this self-reflective journal. My life and my situations and the video that I've made today is just a very small snippet into those things, has definitely given me a path that I really feel that I've only just begun. And I hope that the things that I've touched on today in the video are of some help to you and possibly can change your mindset or just improve your mindset towards positivity, life, and investing in yourself. I'm not necessarily here to say that all the steps that I've talked about in this video are necessarily correct or even that they should be considered. But I do feel that if you can take something away from this video, if this video can help even just one person improve their life, improve their mindset, possibly improve their outcomes or the way that they perceive things, then in my mind, to me, you are a boss bar.
Before I give you my summary to this self-reflective journal, I'd like to recommend 3 books. These 3 books help me to understand how to manage my anger and funnel it into more productive ways to work. They help me to understand the importance of communicating and listening, which I think are 2 of the most important skills that a person can learn. They also taught me that life is challenging and that the challenge of life is to make of it what you want. The lessons are there for everyone to learn. All you need to do is switch off your phone, your computer, or any device and meditate on reflection, what you learnt, and how can you grow from the experiences and challenges that life brings you. The 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent. Now, I'm sure some people would find it amusing that 50 Cent co-wrote a book with a renowned author such as Robert Greene, but in actuality, it was, for me, a fantastic read. The reason being, for me personally, was because I had a very difficult year in my business when I first started personal training. Not that I was failing, in fact, far from it. I was making more sales and money than I had ever experienced, but what I was really struggling with, my personal life and also the relationship that I had at the time. The book itself is based around 50 Cent's life, before his music and fame, and how his experience on the streets of Queens, New York were to shape the wordsmith, Greene, into creating this book. The book gave me my first taste of knowledge and learning and what that could bring me, and I was so much better for investing my time in a book that in some small way reflected my passion and hustle at the time. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. Sapiens was actually a book that I picked up in one of my clients' studies and read the back of the book, and the back of the book said, "How did our species succeed in the battle for dominance?" I bought the book the same day, and although it is a very involved read, it really opened my eyes to the history of evolution and mankind. It made total sense to me to understand that not everything in society is perfect, from laws to kings and even money. Our landscape of history is very complex and also very interesting. The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. The Laws of Human Nature, for me, was a really interesting and intelligent read. I have read it once and I also have listened to it on audiobook. I will probably turn back to the book at some time, as I feel that the book was just a really interesting and insightful read. The main reason I enjoyed this book is because of the lessons shared with the reader by way of using history and also individuals' lives as the lessons, and the author, Robert Greene, uses those and then reflects on them in a summary at the end of each story. The laws of human nature also gave me an insight into how to read and look for people's body language and how different personalities and characteristic traits can influence or affect your life and your hustle to achieve. Overall, these are my first 3 books that I read. Before reading, I really had a much smaller interest, and intellectually, I was less curious than I am today. If you find it hard to read or don't have the time, I definitely recommend listening to an audiobook. They're great for beginners, and also I feel that they are one way to bring peace of mind, clarity, and tranquility when you are in need of answers. Did the wealth humankind accumulated over the last 5 centuries translate into newfound contentment? Did the discovery of inexhaustible energy resources open before us inexhaustible stores of bliss? Going further back, have the 70 or so turbulent millennia since the cognitive revolution made the world a better place to live? Was the late Neil Armstrong, whose footprint remains intact on the windless moon, happier than the nameless hunter-gatherer who 30,000 years ago left her handprint on the wall in Chevet Cave? In the beginning, fear was a basic, simple emotion for the human animal. We confronted something overwhelming, the imminent threat of death in the form of wars, plagues, and natural disasters, and we felt fear. As for any animal, this emotion had a protective function. It allows us to take notice of danger and retreat in time. For us humans, it served an additional positive purpose. We could remember the source of the threat and protect ourselves better the next time. Civilization depended on this ability to foresee and forestall dangers from the environment. Keys to human nature. If we think about the people we know and see on a regular basis, we would have to agree that they are usually quite pleasant and agreeable. For the most part, they seem pleasant to be in our company and relatively upfront and confident, socially responsible, able to work with a team, take good care of themselves, and treat others well. But every now and then, with these friends, acquaintances, and colleagues, we glimpse behaviour that seems to contradict what we normally see. This can come in several forms. Out of nowhere, they make a critical, even cruel comment about us, or express a rather harsh assessment of our work or personality. Is this what they really feel and were struggling to conceal? For a moment, they are not so nice.
It's the Yo Series.